The sun was bleeding into the horizon, staining the skies over Willow Creek with bruises of gold and violet. Down a forgotten dirt road, behind fields long abandoned to weeds, sat a house too tired to keep its secrets anymore. Its paint curled like dead leaves. Its windows, once proud and bright, now wore the dull, lifeless haze of years that had asked too much of too few. Inside, Elena Ramirez hunched over the kitchen table, her frame slight, her hands scarred by the honest brutality of life. A single flickering bulb buzzed overhead, illuminating a battlefield of overdue bills and final notices. Outside, the world yawned toward evening. Inside, time felt trapped, heavy, stale, and patient. From the back room, a harsh, racking cough shattered the brittle silence. Elena didn't flinch. She simply closed her eyes, swallowed the ache swelling in her chest, and stood. "Elena, can you bring me some water?" Her father's voice, worn thin as paper, floated weakly down the hallway. "Coming, Papa," she answered, forcing a brightness into her tone that didn't dare reach her eyes. She filled a glass at the sink, the water spluttering unevenly from pipes older than her, and hurried to the bedroom. Her father lay there, a hollow figure swallowed by an old iron bed, the weight of years and sickness heavy on his frail chest. Still, he managed a smile, a ghost of the man who once carried her on his shoulders through the summer fields. "You need to rest," Elena said, crouching beside him, brushing a cool hand over his forehead. "I'll figure everything out." But the words tasted like lies, even as they left her mouth. Some burdens, she had learned, don't just weigh on your shoulders. They carve themselves into your bones. The shrill crunch of tires on gravel snapped her head toward the window. And there, cutting through the rusted landscape like a knife through cloth, was a sleek black Range Rover, humming to a stop at the front of the house. A stranger, an outsider, someone who didn't belong to the dusty sadness of this dying town. Who could that be? Her father asked, shifting weakly to see, concern tugging at the edges of his voice. Elena didn't answer. She only stared, heart hammering, as the driver's door opened and a tall figure stepped out, his silhouette sharp against the burning sky. In her gut, a quiet tremor began. Not fear exactly, not yet, but a feeling she couldn't name, a whisper of change, riding in on the last breath of day. And somewhere deep inside her, something colder still, a tiny, almost invisible thread of instinct telling her that whatever happens next, life will never be the same. The screen door creaked under Elena's trembling hand as she stepped out onto the sagging porch. The man approached slowly, his polished shoes absurd against the dirt and dust of Willow Creek. His coat, tailored, impeccable, caught the last light of day, and his silver hair gleamed like a warning. Up close, Dominic Whitmore was an unsettling contradiction. A gentleman's face, carved from marble, a predator's calm, cloaked in civility. "Miss Ramirez," he said, voice deep, smooth as river stones, "I've been made aware of your family's situation." Elena narrowed her eyes, the distance between them a fragile thing. "And who are you to know about that?" "Dominic Whitmore," he replied, glancing toward the battered house behind her, as if measuring its worth. "I own several businesses and properties in this county. I've come with a proposal." The word lingered, heavy, in the thickening twilight. "What kind of proposal?" Elena asked, crossing her arms, a shield too thin to matter. He met her gaze, without flinching. "I want you to marry me." The world tilted slightly, the earth itself seeming to suck the breath from her chest. She blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly," he said simply. "In return, your father will receive the finest medical care. Your sister will have her education secured. Your family will no longer live under the shadow of desperation." Elena's throat closed around words she couldn't form. He wasn't smiling. There was no kindness in the offer, only certainty, a chess player moving a piece. "I," she faltered, the edges of her world fraying. I need time to think. Dominic nodded once. Of course. But don't take too long. He glanced up at the darkening sky. Time is a luxury neither of us can afford. And with that, he turned back to his gleaming machine and drove into the bleeding horizon, leaving a silence behind that was louder than any storm. The night pressed heavily against the little house. Inside, Elena sat by the flickering kitchen lamp. The unpaid bills spread like accusations across the table. Her father dozed fitfully in the next room, each cough a dagger to her heart. She stared at her hands, calloused, cracked, trembling. "Papa," she whispered into the stillness. "How did it come to this?" The door creaked. Her father's thin frame appeared, leaning on the doorway for support. "What did that man want?" he asked, voice rasping. Elena hesitated, then told him everything, every cruel syllable. His eyes widened in horror. "No, Elena, no, that's absurd. You can't." His voice broke into a fit of coughing that bent him double. Elena rushed to steady him, her heart breaking anew. "Listen, Papa, if I do this, you'll get the care you need. Rosa won't have to give up her dreams." Tears welled up in the old man's eyes. "But what about your dreams, Elena? What about your happiness?" She wiped her tears roughly, anger and despair battling inside her. "I'm not happy now," she whispered. "At least this way. It means something." Her father said nothing, and maybe that silence hurt worse than any word he could have spoken. Morning broke thin and brittle, in a second-hand gown that scratched her skin and made her feel more like a ghost than a bride. Elena faced her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her lips moved soundlessly. "Am I making the biggest mistake of my life?" A soft knock at the door. Rosa, her younger sister, peered in, swimming in a jacket too big for her tiny frame. Her eyes were red, her smile brave. "It's time." Elena gave a nod that cost everything she had. As she stepped out into the cold morning light, the future yawned open before her, vast, unknowable, and heavy with the scent of endings, disguised as beginnings. The Whitmore estate rose out of the mist like a warning, not a welcome. Stone and iron, towers and shadows, a place built to be impressive and impenetrable. Elena's small suitcase felt absurdly light as she stepped from the Range Rover onto the gravel drive. Inside, marble floors stretched endlessly, crystal chandeliers threw cruel light across towering ceilings. It was beautiful, yes, but in the way a mausoleum is beautiful. Cold, empty, final. A woman in a black dress, Marjorie, the head housekeeper, greeted her with a smile that didn't dare touch her eyes. "This way, Mrs. Whitmore," she said, voice clipped. The bedroom was modest by the house's standards, but grand compared to anything Elena had known. Still, as the door clicked shut behind her, the walls seemed to lean in, whispering, "You don't belong here. And maybe worse, you may never leave." Days blurred into one another, stitched together by silence. Dominic was courteous, always, never cruel, never warm. At dinners, in the cavernous dining hall, Elena's voice echoed when she dared speak. "Do you always eat alone?" she asked once, her voice brittle. Dominic didn't look up from his plate. "Mostly," he replied. A chill ran through her. She tried again. "What kind of business keeps you away so often?" This time, he lifted his gaze. "Cold, flat, important business," he said. And just like that, the wall between them grew higher. That night, as Elena lay staring at the ornate ceiling above her bed, a sound slipped through the walls, faint at first, then unmistakable. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, right outside her door. The house breathed in the dark. Elena slid from beneath the covers, her bare feet whispering across the cold floor as she crept to the door. She pressed her ear against the wood. The footsteps had stopped. She cracked the door open. The hallway stretched long and empty, bathed in thin ribbons of moonlight. And yet, The feeling lingered, that someone had been there, watching, waiting. The next day, restlessness gnawed at her. Elena wandered the mansion, trailing her fingers along banisters, older than her grandmother's memory. Most rooms were locked, some with chains, some with bolts. But it was the west wing door that called to her, heavy, reinforced, no visible keyhole. She reached for the brass handle, curiosity flaring, when a voice sliced through the stillness. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Marjorie." Standing at the end of the hall, her face carved from stone. "Why is it locked?" Elena asked, heart hammering. "It's not for you to know," Marjorie said, voice clipped. "Some doors in this house are better left closed." And then, just like that, she was gone, leaving Elena with the echo of her own racing heart. The rain fell hard that night, drumming against the leaded windows. From her room, Elena watched as Dominic met a man by the front drive, voices low, faces tense. "Make sure she doesn't find out," Dominic said, his tone slicing through the night. "Find out what?" Elena's fingers itched with the need to know. When she found the west wing door slightly ajar the next day, as if daring her, she slipped inside, pulse roaring. The room was dim, air thick with dust and forgotten sins. Shelves lined the walls. Photos, papers, relics of lives erased. She picked up a photo. Dominic standing stiffly beside a young woman, radiant and far too young. On the back, in elegant handwriting, "Dominic and Grace, 1998. Another photo, and another. Different women, different years. Same chilling pattern. Marriage certificates, prenuptial agreements, death certificates, accidents, illnesses, disappearances, all ending the same. Her hand shook as she flipped through a leather-bound journal, reading page after page of Dominic's confessions, how he charmed them, how he caged them, how he made sure they were removed. "They always think they can leave," one page read, ink pressed deep into the paper, "but they never do." The door slammed open behind her. Dominic filled the frame, his shadow long and furious. "What are you doing here?" he growled, voice low and dangerous. Elena snapped the journal shut, heart lurching. I got lost," she lied, stepping back. He closed the distance in two slow, deliberate strides. "This room is off limits. I made that very clear. I needed to understand," she said, voice cracking. "Why so many rooms are locked. Why do you never speak of your past?" His eyes, so cold, bored into hers. "You don't need to understand, Elena," he said. "You only need to follow the rules." Trembling, she dared to whisper, "What happened to them, Dominic? The others? Where are they?" For one heartbeat, something, regret, sadness, flickered across his face. Then, it was gone. "You're my wife now," he said, final and unyielding, "and that's all that matters." Locked in her room that night, Elena pulled the journal from its hiding place beneath her pillow. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Proof. Enough to bring him down. Enough to end this nightmare. But getting out alive would be another battle entirely. The mansion was a fortress. Guards patrolled the grounds. Cameras watched the gates. Despair gnawed at her resolve, until a quiet knock sounded at her door. "Marjorie, I know what you found," the older woman whispered. "I've worked here too long. I've seen too much. But you, Elena, you might have a chance." They hatched a plan by the dying light of a single candle. Marjorie would distract the guards. Elena would slip through the hidden passage she had found behind a crumbling wall in the basement. It was risky. It was desperate. It was the only way. "Promise me," Marjorie said, gripping her hand tight. "Promise you won't look back." Elena swallowed her fear and nodded. "I promise." The night smelled of rain and fear. Elena waited until Dominic's car disappeared down the drive. Before she moved, through the winding halls, down the hidden stair, into the narrow, crumbling tunnel that snaked beneath the estate. Behind her, the echo of shouted orders. "Find her. Panic clawed at her throat. The tunnel's exit, a rusted iron door, groaned as she pushed against it. Fresh air. Freedom. She ran into the night, thorns clawing at her arms, mud sucking at her boots. Behind her, flashlights stabbed through the darkness. She can't have gone far. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, and just when her body threatened to give out, headlights appeared on the distant road. A car. Salvation. She stumbled forward, waving her arms desperately. The car screeched to a halt. A man, tall, sharp-eyed, urgent, leaped out. "Are you Elena?" he barked. "Yes," she gasped. "Get in." No time. She hurled herself into the seat, clutching the journal to her chest. Behind them, Dominic's men exploded from the trees, headlights blinding. The chase was on. The city lights rose like a promise on the horizon. Beside her, the man, Lucas Reed, an investigative journalist, tightened his grip on the wheel. "With this," he said, nodding to the journal, "we can end him." And they did. In court, Elena stood tall as Dominic Whitmore. The predator who thought he owned her was dragged into the light, charges stacked higher than his money could buy off. Families wept in gratitude. The media roared. Dominic's fortune crumbled, divided to heal the wounds he had caused. Elena used her share not to vanish, but to build. The haven opened its doors, a safe place for women, fleeing cages like the one she had survived. And through it all, Lucas stayed, not out of obligation, but out of something real, something whole. One golden evening, beneath the same vast sky where he first found her, Lucas knelt with a simple ring. "Elena," he said, voice steady, "you showed me what courage looks like. Let me walk the rest of this road with you." Tears blurred her vision. "Yes," she whispered, "but no locked doors in our house." They laughed, free and unafraid, and as they danced under the stars, surrounded by the community she had helped rebuild, Elena knew some journeys don't just lead you out of the darkness. They lead you into a life more beautiful than you ever dared imagine.